Right, well, welcome along to Tweet Street Scotland Occupied, home of the satirical saltire. I'm Cinnamon Bridges, aka Peter. With me this evening, my usual wingman and co-host, we've got JB Whitesney. All right, John, how you doing, buddy?
Not bad, Peter. Good to see you once again, man.
And you, how have you been for we last spoke? How have you been taking
I'm doing like the weather.
How have you been taking in the news of the potential leaders that are going to be getting kind of a foisted upon us?
Saying to Farah and Erika and that there, I couldn't actually watch the debate last night because I wouldn't be able to afford the dentist bill with grinding my teeth after watching it. Like, I just had to sort of look on social media and sort of get an idea of what was said in the news and such like. But they really are the most appalling characters out there. They're appealing to the lowest denominator in England. I'll deport more people than she will, and she'll deport more people than me. So it really is the knuckle-dragging Brexiteer, right-wing, fascist elite that they're appealing to, but seems very popular still in England, much to the horror of most of us up here. But hey-ho, there's no surprise in that, Peter.
Well, that's it. There is absolutely none. Right, so I'm just checking the we're going out live on the channels now, because what we're here for is we've got a Salvo Claim Your Right panel joining us. Now, Jan is struggling to connect to the meeting, she's telling me, so she might join us as we go through. But we've got a panel of people from the Salvo collective group, organisation, whatever you want to call it. And they're going to talk about the Salvo and the claim of right. Now, you'll maybe notice the wee bit of cheek in the title of the day's live stream. It's A to Z of Jigsaw identification. Salvo claim of right. You know what I mean? Our future salvation, right? So, so a wee bit of plain words and what have you. But we'll get into that a wee bit later on, because there's a lot about conspiracies and stuff like that. And Salvo was supposed to be what deemed a conspiracy and all at one point, John. What do you know about Salvo?
Not a hellish much other than what we and you chatted about a wee bit, but there's some interesting people in it that seem to be very motivated to bring some information to the forefront, which is sorely needed.
Right. And what do you know about Claim Your Right, John?
Claim Your Right, I mind watching it actually when we used to write into watching Prime Minister's Question Time, and sometimes I'd recorded what was said, and I actually recorded the line at the time when it was mentioned in Westminster, when it went through unopposed. It was hardly aimed in the House of Commons at the time, but it was unopposed, and it was obviously recorded in Hansard and such like, and it's quite interesting to see recently they were trying to say it wasn't recorded by Hansard and they're trying to delete it or whatever else. So basically, Claim Your Right goes to say that the sovereign right of the Scottish people resides with the Scottish people in Scotland and not with Westminster. And they were disputing that at that time. They might rue the day they got that slide through Westminster unopposed, but it did go through unopposed. Right.
So of late, one is something that we had on a podcast on St Andrew's Day last year. We had somebody on, Diane, with her voice talking about certain things. And she spotted that the Hansard minute had been doctored and got onto them. So to Diane Filiski, well done to you for being so on the ball. Right, so we've now got the Salvo panel. Wanted to say before we get started on this, because it's my big sister's 50th birthday today. Right? So happy birthday, big sis. Right.
Happy birthday.
Aye. Right, so now we're going to get to the panel without further ado. So I just need to change this a wee bit. So, Anita.
Hello.
Hi, Anita. How you doing?
I'm good, thanks. Thanks for having us on.
You're very welcome. It's good to have you on and try to find out a wee bit more about the Claim Your Right and Scotland's constitution.
Good.
Excuse me. We've also got Farah. Hi, Farah. How you doing?
Hi.
It's good to see you. Hi, I'm good. It's good to see you. Thanks very much for coming on.
Well, always, Peter, for you.
Oh, thanks. We've also got David. So Hi, David. How are you doing?
I'm very, very well, Pete. Thank you.
It's good.
Glad to
Right,
be on.
well, as I say, it's a pleasure to have you, and hopefully look forward to finding out more about Salvo and about the claiming right, and get your thoughts on some other things in Scottish politics, and not necessarily just Scottish politics, that politics that interfere with Scotland, pretty much. So we'll do a wee bit of talking about that. But we'll get. Hold on, I'm just going to say Jan's trying to join us.
I'm here.
Oh, hi, Jan. Right, put your camera on.
All right. I tried. I thought you'd maybe switched it up.
No. Once you put your camera on, I'll pin you to the screen. Because we were supposed to be having another member joining us, and we might have somebody else joining us shortly. So, but we'll get talking about that in a wee while. Thanks to everybody that's joining us online and sharing the content online as a live stream. So we hope to get going with all the content just shortly. But what I'm going to do in the meantime, while we're getting people to join, is I'm going to play a short clip that will get us kind of a talking, because this was something that our First Minister had said. So give me a wee second to set this up, folks. Right. So what I'll do is we'll share this wee video. Of course, it's live. It's not going according to plan today.
Go on, Pete.
Right, under pressure. Right, so we'll share this video. Right, here we go, folks. Sorry for the delay.
The principle, which is long accepted until now, that the UK is a voluntary union of nations within which Scotland has the right to self-determination, is being torn to shreds. Indeed, all Scotland hears from UK politicians these days is democracy denial. They trade opinions on how many years it should be before Westminster might allow us to make a democratic choice about our own future. The fact that the Scottish people have repeatedly elected a majority in the Scottish Parliament committed to an independence referendum is treated as immaterial. You don't have to be a supporter of Scottish independence to know that that is not democracy. Now, that attitude is not surprising from Tories, and if it was just the Conservatives, it might matter less given the political death spiral they appear to be in. But these days, where the Tories go, Labour seems obliged to follow. So scared is Labour of Tory attacks from the right, and so obsessed with neutralising rather than standing up to these attacks, that they are becoming a pale imitation of the Tories rather than a real alternative. Now, that has implications for the direction of the UK as a whole and across the spectrum of social and economic policy. But here's what it means for Scotland. This is Labour's pitch to Scotland in a nutshell. To help Labour win in England, Scotland must suck up what we did not vote for. Brexit and all of its dire consequences must be accepted with no possible route back into the EU or even the single market. But what we did vote for, what we have repeatedly voted for, an independence referendum and the possibility of a better alternative, will be blocked by Labour in all circumstances and for all time. Just as in 2014, they are teaming up with the Tories to frustrate the will of the Scottish people. You know, earlier this week, we even had the grotesque spectacle of a Labour MP actually bragging about councillors in Edinburgh being suspended for refusing to back the Tories over the SNP. Labour's positions are nothing to do with the interests or the democratic wishes of Scotland. They are cynical political calculations based on, in my view, the deeply misguided belief that the way back to power is to adopt wholesale the policies of the Tory government they claim to oppose. For Scotland, this means, again, that our interests in democracy are to be sacrificed, sold out on the altar of winning Tory votes.
Right, so, yes, it's time for independence. Right. Now, we'll keep with this. I've had word for Jan that she's got to be joining us, the other Jan. Jan, your camera's still on.
Hello? Can you hear me?
We can hear you. Hiya, how you doing? You all right?
I can't work out. It's saying effects on, or no, effects off, but it won't switch on. So I don't know. I'm lost.
Yeah, there should be a wee camera icon just at the bottom. It's just the camera icon that you need to click. It's not the effects. That's what I do anyway. I don't know if it's the same on your view. Right, but anyway, so we'll have the other Jan joining us just very shortly. But first of all, Anita, I'll come to you first. Look, for that message there that you heard from the First Minister, and knowing what you know about the claim of rights, the claim of right, Joanna Cherry had something interesting to say as well. So I guess the question that I'm kind of looking at is, what does Westminster sovereignty mean?
Right, well, Westminster is sovereign in England, but it's not sovereign here because we, the people, are sovereign. And I think that's what they're trying to get at. Westminster made themselves sovereign in 1689 with the Bill of Rights, whereas here in 1689 we had the Claim of Rights, and that affirmed that we, the people, are sovereign. And it's us that have the power. We have got the ultimate power. So when Boris Johnson's saying, no, you can't have a referendum, no, you can't do this, no, you can't do that, it isn't up to them. It's up to us.
Aye.
And we need to get this message out to everybody that we are the people and we are sovereign and we can do what we like without their say-so.
Hey, John, what do you make of that?
Yeah, it's crystal clear. It's also the fact that they're now going to rely on English courts to try and stymie Scotland's right to independence. So they're trying to use a legal route. Now, this is meant to be a voluntary union we're in, but they're now going to try and use English law to stop us getting independence. And that's totally undemocratic. But they don't have any pretense at democracy anymore. It's keeping Scotland subservient to this increasingly rabid right-wing cabal of fraudsters. A lot of them are a shower of swines, and they'll do anything to keep Scotland under the Brexit jackboot, and it's horrific. And how long do we put up with this for, Peter? How long do we remain apathetic and let them get away with it? Even in England, there's a good lot of people in England who hate what the Tories are doing. How long can they get away with it? How long before it hits the streets? And with winter coming, fuel bills going through the roof, what we've got to lose? It's only going to get worse and worse and worse. And we can extricate Scotland from this mess, but whether we choose to do it or no, we need to get more people activated and involved and enthusiastic about doing it. And we have an escape route, but we've got to be willing to use it and get lots of people on board to decide that's the right thing to do.
Bang on, bang on.
Definitely.
Clara, I'm going to come to you half a head, right? Because we can only see half of your head. What can we do to kind of combat some of the things that John was talking about there?
Well, first and foremost, we need to tell the people of Scotland that the Claim of Right 1689 is the Scottish Constitution
just like we have a Law Society of Scotland, separate laws in Scotland, our own judiciary system, we actually do have our own constitution, which is embedded in the Claim of Rights. Now, my co-stars can interrupt me if I make a mistake, right? So in this Claim of Rights, it says the people of Scotland are sovereign. They've loaned their power, as Sarah always says, to the monarch and to the government. And if it's a tyrannical government, if it's a dictatorship, if it's not for the good of the people of Scotland, they can be removed.
Right. Now we're going to come to David next. David, give your.
See, that was a very interesting snippet from Nicola's speech, but it wasn't the most interesting one, Pete.
Mm-hmm.
And the most interesting bit from Nicola's speech was this part here. I'm going to read it out. It's only like a couple of paragraphs, but it says, finally and fundamentally, this paper makes the case that the democratic deficit cannot be fixed within a system founded on the principle of Westminster sovereignty. Now, I don't know about you, but I have never heard Nicola Sturgeon talk about stuff like Westminster sovereignty. She goes on to say there is no constitutional reform in the UK that cannot be overturned or undermined on the whim of a Westminster majority. Because what she's saying there is that Westminster is in charge. It's like in the words of the brilliant Alan Bissett, we're in charge. What are you going to do? We're in charge. And they are in charge. And that's what Nicola was getting at. And that's what Joanna was reinforcing in her little piece in the National as well. So we're starting to talk about sovereignty. And we're just going to take the credit for that, actually, that Salvo is bringing up the issue of sovereignty. Because when Westminster says that we're in charge, we are sovereign, that's a wee bit of a lie, as Anita was saying, because they're not sovereign in Scotland. No. The claim of right makes us sovereign. And it's not just the claim of right, by the way. Scotland's people have been sovereign for a long, long time. All the claim of right did was to bring all that together and basically create a Scottish constitution. Oh, and by the way, it also kicked out James VII as well, by the way. So that just goes to show the power of the Scottish people in terms of sovereignty. But it goes the way back beyond Robert Bruce even. But I mean, even if you look at Bruce, Bruce, we always talk about things like Bannockburn and the Declaration of Arbroath. And if you look at the Declaration of Arbroath, that really famous section of the Declaration of Arbroath. Mm-hmm. No, not the one you're thinking about 100 of us remaining and all that stuff. The one before that, that's my favourite passage in the Declaration of Arbroath, because what that says is that, and I'm paraphrasing here, is that if the king should kind of like go astray and make us into an English king, then we will get rid of that king and get us another king. Now, if that's not people's sovereignty, I'm not sure what that is. And that was in 1320. It's about 400 odd years before the Treaty of Union. So it's been going along for a long time, and someone just put up Guardians of the Realm 1286 there. That's right, it's been going on for a long time. And what the Claim of Right did was it kind of brought all that together and basically made a Scottish constitution. And if you look on the Salvo website, you'll see the work of Sarah Salyers there in drawing all these parts together from the hundreds of years that Scotland's people have been sovereign and putting together a constitution. It's good stuff.
Right, so Jan, I'm going to introduce you because you've just joined us. So you're not on screen just yet because I'm still showcasing this. But welcome along.
Hi, sorry, I can't get the camera to work and the kids are at their dad's, so
that's all right. Right, so we've got two Jans, right? So Jan Tweet Street and Jan Salvo, right? So Jan Salvo, you've just joined us as well. So hi, Jan Salvo, how are you doing?
Hi, how you doing, Peter? Long time no see.
Hi, it's been a while. So I know you were a wee bit rushed and you're just in. But as I say, welcome along. So, give us your initial thoughts on what you heard for you've come in there, and your take on the claim of right.
Me?
No,
Just
no,
then?
no, Salvo,
the-
Jan.
Well, I suppose I've always been aware of the claim of right. Not to the extent until Sarah literally pulled, all the bits and pieces together, which actually made, pretty much the Scottish People's Contract. So yeah, it's made a lot more sense, and Sarah's done a really good job to pull that together, so like other people can understand it. She's simplified it, because you remember this is older text and a lot of wording that we probably wouldn't use today. And there's some of it that's kind of, we wouldn't use today, but a lot of it is very, very current and should be used. And the people have a right to this. How it's not been pulled out before a long time ago when, people were chased off their land was a bit worrying, I suppose, because it was closer to the time and people were aware what its detail was. So yeah, I think it's really good that it's starting to become, everybody's talking about it. We need it in everybody's houses. We need to know that we are the sovereign people. And it's our right to see how things go here. That's how it's done. If we don't like it as a people, then we should have a right to say no, and we do. We just actually haven't used that power.
Aye. I'd let, again, everything that's been said for each of the panel members, and we'll get to see Jan in a wee second once we've viewed this, has been spot on. I'm going to jump to some of the people that are watching online and say hello to Suzanne, Louise, Sarah, Annie. Try to see who else is commenting. Alan, Jock. So to all our viewers that's online on Facebook, we've also got Porty on Twitter and on YouTube, and we've got other ones that I'll get through eventually. I'm just no one to stay mute for too long. Right, we can come back to like wee videos and something like this a wee bit later on, but this was just to kind of give people an idea of some of the things that have been hidden a wee bit, and that you weren't wholly made aware of. It was hard to find out about. So
it was only hidden, Pete, because the UK Parliament made it hidden. Because when the union began, and stop me if I'm talking too much here, but when the union began, and the union, by the way, that might be a subject for you in the future, because how did a modern, wealthy, educated, outward-looking country like ours become shackled to and controlled by another country? I mean, how did that even happen in the land of Bruce and Wallace and all the people that fought with them to regain our independence in the 14th century? Suddenly, 400 years later, we suddenly give it all up. I mean, what was all that about? How do we even get there? But we did. But the point is that after the union, the Westminster sovereignty suddenly just took over. And that's how we haven't heard about it, because they don't want you to talk about that. They don't, because you'll see that in the Daily Mail, how Westminster is sovereign. You'll see how the Westminster Parliament talks about how we're sovereign. They will never talk about Scottish sovereignty, but it is there. And maybe we'll get a chance to talk about how it's there later on, because that's a really interesting part. Right.
Well, I'm glad that you said that, because what we're going to do now is we're going to look at this is a wee bit of the old Tweet Street spin on something. So just forgive us, folks, and entertain us here. Because obviously Scotland is quite a small country, allegedly, but it's quite big at heart. There's a lot of people that are big on Scotland. So I just wanted to check something with some folks first of all. Right. Does everybody know the boundaries of Scotland? Aye. Aye, pretty much. Pretty much.
Yeah.
Cool,
Is this
that's
a geography lesson?
this. Aye, well, it's just something new. Something new, like a potential leader. Potential leader. Doesn't appear to know the boundaries of Scotland are. So let's have a wee look here.
Darlington Dan.
It's about the values that bind us as a United Kingdom, and I don't think we should be afraid of making that emotional argument for the United Kingdom from the heart, as well as the practical argument for it and demonstrating it. And that's what I'd like to try and do.
And where would you be doing that? Would you be spending a lot of time in Scotland yourself? There have been times when previous Tory leaders have not necessarily been welcomed north of the border.
Yeah, I mean, I think people can already see that I take that seriously. I mean, I was the Chancellor who set up a economic campus for the government and for the Treasury in Darlington. And not only did I set it up, and it's going, well, it was going incredibly well when I left, and I'm sure it still is, I also spent a lot of time there myself personally, and ensured that all my ministers also did in the department. Because it's not enough just to set up these things. Actually, if you want to demonstrate that they matter to you, being there is really important. It's about the value.
Oh, right, so get his message is know your drill, isn't it? It's know your drill. Hold on. I'm going to put the full Salvo panel on screen here, because this is the Salvo panel.
Well, is it not the case, Pete, that that there's quite a few people in the north of England would quite like the border to be shifted south a wee bit? Maybe the good people of Darlington would like that as well.
Well, I mean that's a distinct possibility. I mean, you've already got like Liverpool trying to leave, want to leave them. You've got the north. Aye, like, you know how it goes. It's like Hadrian's Wall's a wee bit. I mean, I think they're trying to give us a wee bit extra. It's how it goes, right? No, joking aside, right? Because this is a serious matter, right? But the Scottish Constitution isn't something that gets much recognition, and it hasn't got much recognition until late, like until people have started to unearth the potential. How do we take it for the step that we're at, where people are finding out about it?
Can I a wee rant, Peter?
Hi, Jan. Sorry, right, Jan. I'm going to pin you, although we can't see you, but at least folk will know that it's just no voice coming from anywhere.
I wanted to answer, well, one of the panelists there. We were forced into the Union. There was troops in Northern Ireland, round the border, boats in the sea. The Duke of Marlborough was going to crush us if we didn't sign the Union. So that's how we came to be in it. But the claim of right. Now, when I seen Sarah at the Alba conference, it wasn't enough. I had to research and see if what she was saying was right. And I did. I searched for it. And I came across some stuff, because the claim of right was agreed with William and Mary, William the Conqueror and Mary, and ratified obviously by them, and then again ratified by Queen Anne herself. It's the way that makes everything legal and above board. They can't stop it. That's why it's hidden, and you can tell by the strength of the trolls that are about on this. I've had a few try to tell me what a pile of crap it is, but no, I'm having none of it, and they can't beat you, so they disappear. Once everybody knows about this claim of right, we've essentially won just by everybody knowing it. It can't be denied. Anyway, that's me.
Right, thanks, Jan. Right, so Jan, the other Jan, the Fisalvo,
One
there you
little
go.
point there. It
Aye, go for it.
the conqueror, it was William of Orange.
Oh, sorry, yeah.
Aye, and know that this matters, but I have seen this argument. Hold on, I'm going to put myself on here. As a matter of fact, just put everybody on. Yeah, gallery. Right, so we're on. I saw this argument online about Catholics and what have you. Right now, I'm not a practicing Catholic. I was raised a Catholic, went to Catholic school, and what have you. Altar boy and that. But so I've jumped through one cult into another type thing, right? So I have full faith in the claim of right, in the Constitution, and the restoration of reconvening the estates. I've got every faith in it. And as Jan corrected there, it was William of Orange that ratified it. So it shouldn't be anything about a political party. It shouldn't be anything about a religion, a colour, a creed. It should be about Scotland and the people of Scotland and Scotland's culture. Because Scotland has a culture. There is a culture for Scottish people. And when I say Scottish people, it's a mixture. I mean, it's a mixture of everything. Everybody. You can't say what's the typical Scottish person. You know what I mean? Stereotypes of Scottish people are gone. That cringe is gone. But things have moved. The world's moved on. We've changed. We've changed along with the world, and our culture suffered as a result of it. And it's about time that we get a wee bit of recognition for the things that we've done as a country, for the size of the country and what we've achieved and the greatness that we've put on the world. So aye, it's having a wee bit of pride in your country. I've always been proud to be Scottish. I've always been one of these ones that, like, it's every Scotland team, every like person that's representing Scotland, like, I am supporting them, right? And I'm disappointed for them if they don't win. Right? It's one of the things. That's it. So that's me as an individual. So I'm right behind this. But other people want to know more, and we want to get to grow it. So we've got to talk to some of the people.
What's interesting is that people talk about Scotland gaining independence. Should Scotland be an independent country and all that kind of stuff? But as we've been talking about, we should really be talking about restoring our independence. In fact, many people would argue that Scotland is an independent country. We're an independent country shackled to another country because of this treaty. Basically, we're married to another country with a stupid contract, and all we need to do is dissolve that contract in order to be able to go back to self-determination, where we were before 1707. Mm-hmm. And what Jan was saying was absolutely right about the claim of right. In fact, after the treaty was done, it had to be ratified by both parliaments because, and again, we need to remember that people watching this might not be totally au fait with what happened in 1707, but Scotland's Parliament was independent, England's Parliament was independent. Although we shared the same Queen, same monarch, we were both independent. So that treaty had to be ratified by each Parliament. And so the issue that the negotiators had with the treaty was reconciling the two different types of sovereignty. In England, as has been said, the Westminster or the English Parliament was sovereign. In Scotland, the people were sovereign. And they couldn't actually reconcile that. So when the Act, when the bill went through the Scottish Parliament in 1706, 1707, in fact, we should get down on our knees and thank the drafters of that bill, because the Scottish Act is slightly different to the English Act. In England, they simply took the articles of the treaty, whacked it into a bill and passed and said, right, okay, we're now going to union with Scotland. In Scotland, that wasn't quite the case. What they did was, in order to preserve the sovereignty of the Scottish people, they inserted a clause, a preamble into the Act of Union with England. I mean, Sarah's fond of calling it a prenup, like a wedding prenup. And that's exactly what it was. And they put in there an act basically preserving the Presbyterian religion. But in that act mentions the claim of right, and that shall be there in all time coming. And these are important words, in all time coming. So the people's sovereignty through the treaty itself, it's a condition of the treaty itself that the Scottish people are sovereign. So we need to start thinking about not becoming an independent country. We need to start thinking about restoring our independence through the claim of right. And
Right.
that's what I think was so interesting about what Nicola was saying and what Joanna was saying, talking about sovereignty of the Scottish people and going back to the time that the claim of right was debated in the Scottish Parliament, the time that the claim of right was debated in the UK Parliament, and it was waved through. And that was great. Thanks very much. Because it means that the claim of right has now been accepted by everyone that matters. All we need now is for a national liberation movement to push the government to adopt the claim of right as its basis for declaring Scottish independence. And we can do that without asking anybody's permission. I think that's the key thing.
Mm-hmm. I mean, we're getting some comments online. Louise has commented, if the Scottish Parliament were to recognise officially the authority of a convention of the estates, then I would suggest this is one way for the Tribunal of the Estates to remove us from the Treaty of Union. Now, somebody's answered saying that it is. Jock's answered saying that it is. And then there's been a wee bit of conversation. So it's stimulating a wee bit of conversation online. So Anita, I'm going to ask you to come in and let, if there's anything in particular you want us to go through on the Salvo website, I'll be the guide, you be the guide, and I'll do the clicking of the mouse and what have you, and you can talk us through anything that you want people to know about.
Right, wait till I go on to the Salvo website.
That's why you're doing that, Anita. See, the most important things on the Salvo website is these two buttons at the top. It says join Salvo and donate.
Yep.
Yes, definitely.
Right, well, there you go. Well, Anita's coming in with, which is what I talk about. Excuse me. David's a very valid point. Join Salvo. Donate.
Aye.
I'm kidding about
yes.
donate.
It's a movement. It's a movement to join. It doesn't cost you anything to join. Obviously,
not yet.
It's people's own time and effort that they're putting into it. However, there's a lot of work goes into that. There's a lot of work the Salvo guys do behind the scene, and others, by the way. It's not just Salvo that's talking about claim of right. However, it's been driven. My first idea it was for, well, I knew about the claim of right through before, but since it started getting the recognition it's getting, it was through Salvo and then SSRG. I know SSRG have got a conference this weekend talking about constitution. So, Anita.
Right, at the SSRG conference, Sarah's going to be speaking, but also on the Saturday at the conference, Salvo are going to be doing breakout groups. And I think there's still time for people to get tickets to go to the conference, so go.
Yes, there is.
You can buy one-day tickets now as well. So everybody go to the SSRG conference.
And sorry, just to pick up on Anita's point there, Pete, there's 2 Salvo breakout sessions on the Saturday of the conference. So that's the 30th. Yeah, and we're talking about how we actually reconstitute the Convention of the Estates in these 2 sessions. So they were really, really interesting sessions. That's on the Saturday the 30th. So if you want to spend £10, go to SSRG and you're interested in Salvo and the Convention of the Estates, I would suggest you go on the Saturday.
Oh, and they go, we're getting suggestions in that. It's a good job it's not an insurance product. Right, so we're going to come back to John. John, is there anything you want to ask of what we've been hearing?
No, I wanted actually to say it's actually fascinating, Peter, because I'm somebody that went to school. Subjects I done well in was history, classical studies, and things like that. So it's fascinating from my memory. All I was taught in history at school was about Henry VIII, about War of the Roses, and all this. So this is history. These things like this Constitution we're talking about, that was all obviously at that time, but it was removed from the curriculum, if you like. It wasn't even looked at. We were force-fed English history as British history, and the Scottish contingent was practically deleted from it. So it just shows you how much influence they've used over us to control and manipulate us. And it's only now that we're waking up to the fact that there's a whole load of history that's been deleted by the British from our history, and it can actually help us regain our right as an independent country. So it's very fascinating to me, and I'm all for it, Pete.
Excellent, John. Right.
Yes,
so,
it was deliberately hidden first.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
Pretty much in like when the Union at the Crowns happened, that probably gave them quite a lot of insight, because that allowed them to see, you know, that's when the mingling started happening, whereas those that were wealthy, you know, getting lands down south, and there was a wee bit of to and fro there, you know, your language started being brought in, you know, so they'd 100 years ahead of us, where we always, recently they used to say, just a few years back, you know, they're 100 years ahead of us in propaganda. Well, no, they're not. You know, they're over 400, they're about 400 years ahead of us. This is a deliberate, you know, if you tell a lie often enough, it becomes the truth to other people. And you, I mean, you all must remember, I mean, I certainly do. I often say to my mum, you know, when she used to say to me, it's not I, it's yes, speak proper English. You know, but then you would go out in the playground and you'd be, oh, aye, that's bogging. And, you know, you would speak, you know, the language that, you know, you grew up with. And you know, a few years back in a university, I remember 2 lecturers, there was some words that I was saying, and, you know, it wasn't till further on down the line that they asked me. It's like, I didn't, you know, that people actually don't know Scots. Yeah, I was brought up, Scots is still very familiar and very strong where I come from, especially, you know, when somebody gets annoyed or whatever, straight into Scots. So we need to learn to love our language again. Scots is a great language. Absolutely fantastic. You know, look at the poetry that's written in Scots. But however, it's only good to talk about 1 week of the year.
Right, well, hold on, right, because you're doing that hybrid.
There's some good Scots there.
Aye, right. Well, hold on a wee minute, right? Wait a minute, right? Because I need to put that on, right? Replace. Right, so there we go.
Name your shite. Use the claimer right.
Right, that's Anita. Right, that's Anita.
That was a present to me.
I see you're sporting that a lovely pink Salvo branded T-shirt. Are these available?
Thanks to Jan.
Thanks to Jan. Are these available from all good T-shirt shops?
No.
No.
Hopefully soon you should be able to order them from the Salvo website.
Yep.
Excellent. That's good. Right now, Jan, your camera. Right, Tweet Street, Jan. Your camera's on sideways, but I'm going to bring you in here as well, because this is the first that your camera's been on. Right, so you're on sideways. Right, can you turn it? Aye, turn it. Right, that'll do. Even like that's fine. Obviously your tilt and turn isn't on, right? So you're just on narrow view, right? That'll do. Hiya, right? Good to see you. Right, so that's Tweet Street, John. Right, so I was just bringing you into because I've seen your camera coming on there, right? So I'll remove your pin and we'll go back to Anita, right? So on this Salvo website, you can talk us a wee bit through. So if we're going to claim a right, for talking sake.
Well, basically everything that you need to know is on it. You can join, you can donate. We're trying to get groups together and get assemblies started up and stuff. So basically, just like David says, right at the top there, join Salvo. If you
Join
can
Salvo.
donate, because obviously if we're sticking it around the country, we need money to do that.
Anika, can I quick a question there? See that Salvo website? Can you or somebody with the capability put a link to social media for Twitter and other ones as well that you can click onto the Salvo website from social media, from Twitter, like?
I'll do a live demonstration.
www.salvo.scot.
I'll do a live demonstration.
You know how you put the Twitter icon on it and another social media icon? It might be helpful. Put these other social media icons on the Salvo webpage.
Right. So here's a wee on the Twitter page. Right.
It is actually on the website.
Right, on the Twitter page. Right.
Is it on the website as well, though? Yeah.
Yeah. If you scroll down to the bottom of the website, there's a couple of icons for Twitter and Facebook.
Right. So if you click on that, right. If you click on that, it takes you to Salvo, right? The home screen. And then if you scroll down all the way through it, you've got all the icons at the bottom, I'm sure. Facebook, Twitter, name, email address, right? So it's all there. The website is up and running.
It is indeed, yeah.
It's up and running.
Thanks to David for sorting it up.
Thanks to who was that? Sorry, Anita.
Sarah did it to begin with, but David has been on and made some changes and stuff. And
brilliant. Right, well, I'm going to play this wee video for everybody, right? And I'll remove us from the screen just so that it's a full view for everybody that's watching online as well. We'll still be able to see it, obviously, but we'll not be able to see us, I don't think. So I need to do something here first. And it's right. And if I do.
If you go and look up UK unwritten constitution, here's what you're going to find. You might find yourself up on the page.
Can you see that all right, guys?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's all right. It's all right.
It's a video from the homepage.
Aye, that's fine, right?
The British Library, which has a wonderful article about where the Constitution exists, and it'll take you through Magna Carta, the Declaration of Parliament, the Bill of Rights, and then on to the present, without a single mention of Scotland having any constitutional documents. So what happened? How did the pre-Union English Constitution suddenly become the post-Union Scottish Constitution? How did we all become English and bound by conventions, which, by the way, people will say in terms of Scottish excavation of the Constitution, my goodness, that's ancient history, isn't it? I mean, why are you bothering with that? Let's deal with today's realities. Today's realities include something called Parliamentary Sovereignty, which says that Parliament is sovereign over the people, and 1 million people on the streets don't have as much influence as a corporate lobbyist. It's up to Parliament. That's Parliamentary Sovereignty. High Court ruled in 2016 that there was no requirement for Parliament, for the judges to listen to the electorate. Do you know Scotland had a very different system? And our ancestors, when they signed that forced marriage contract, and it was a contract, they put in a prenup. They did. They put in a get out clause. The get out was, and this was done, whatever you think of the Presbyterian Kirk, and I have Presbyterian ancestors going all the way back, they were worried that Scotland would lose her character, her judicial character, her religious character, and her constitutional character. So they made it a condition of the Union and the treaty that that constitution was upheld. Now, we've been excavating that constitution, and in very short terms, what it says is, it is a crime in Scotland to claim that a parliament is sovereign over the people. It is a crime punishable by forfeiture of power. It is a crime to attack human rights. It is a crime to attack the right to protest in Scotland. It is a crime to give money to your pals. It is without parliamentary oversight. It is a crime to use the law to go after your political enemies. So some of us, you may know about the SSRG and Albafest and Salvo, some of us are excavating those rights because When you get married, if you have a prenup and the other partner breaks the conditions of that contract, you've got a way out. And it's not a coincidence that we've been being told that our way out is get a majority of MPs in Westminster. Oh, no, it's not. Prove that most people, including those who are only passing through, want it. Oh, no, it's not. Because the map that the prison governors will give us to get out, the map that the abuser in the marriage will give you to get out is gaslighting. We have a way out. And that way out is to get the people of Scotland together, back up off their knees after the treachery and the betrayal and the centuries of abuse we have suffered, and explain you are sovereign in Scotland. You lend your power to any government, and you can take it back, not by saying, oh, well, we'll vote in another party. You can sack them, and you can replace them. So we are asking conference to send this wonderful motion back, I wish we weren't, to include the acknowledgement that power in Scotland is vested in the people, and that we need to support the movement that is looking to create that grassroots tidal wave that says to the whole of Scotland and the whole of the world and the international courts, this is our law, this is the crime that's been committed against us, and we will, thank you very much, be reconvening the Assembly of the People that was known as the Convention of the Estates, putting this government on trial, and when they are found guilty, sacking them.
Right, so that was the thing that kicked it off for everybody, to the extent that we're now. Now, John, I know that you've got other matters on at 8 o'clock. So, do you anyone want to comment before you drink off, buddy?
Yeah, sure. I'd like to thank everyone for coming along tonight, and it's refreshing to see the enthusiasm and the expertise that these people have, Peter, to help us get on the road to independence. So it's been a very worthwhile exercise, and I'm sure we'll speak again soon, because we've got to get on the road to independence. If no, there's no hope for us. So thank you all. We'll catch up with you again the next time. Thank you.
Right, John. So that John's got to duck out, but we're carrying on with the chat because we're getting a lot of comments coming in through online. So I'm going to refer to some of them. So first of all, a wee bit of praise for David working his arse off to get the site up and running. That's something that's coming in.
Do you think, Peter, we could get Neil Oliver to do a programme about it? Hey?
I put it to him that William of Orange ratified the claim of right, and what do you think about that?
I mean, we could try and get him, Murdo Fraser and wee Bowie.
All the Rangers supporters should love that, shouldn't they? You know.
But again, and it shouldn't. But this is what we're saying. It shouldn't come down to a Fitbit team or
it often doesn't it?
Or a religion, or it should be about. It should be for the heart. It should be a wee bit of pride about who you are, what you originated for, and like what made you like who you are, like because people don't share enough, right? And it's one of the things that you know when you need to do the right thing, right? But you know when you need to do the right thing, like sometimes it's really difficult to do the right thing, right? So I'm going to share a wee something with folk that's personal to me, right? And it's got none at all to do with what we're talking about, right? But it's got to do with the type of people that some of us are, right? So give me a wee second to set this up. Now, anything that I'm doing here, there's none of the panel members, not even any of the Tweet Street folk are aware of what my what I'm setting up here, right? And what I'm doing here. It's just spontaneous. This was something that I thought I would share to show what the type of folk that we are. So I'm prepared to kind of open up a wee bit here, because there's only certain things I can say at the minute. Right, so I was taught Farang when I was growing up, right? I was taught right Farang. And I grew up in a scheme, just your average scheme in Scotland, with a load of toe rags and what have you. And you learned, like, for folk that you grew up round about, like, you learned off them. You learned, I was told to kind of stay away from certain folk, but a lot of people were, right, as you grew up. But this was something that happened to me. And again, like, it's ironic that I'm sharing this story, because this happened on my other sister's 21st birthday in 1995, right? So gangland thugs, human rights case fails at court, right? So it's a bit of a sensational headline, right? A Hamilton thug who was jailed for his role in a gangland shooting last week lost a £60,000 compensation bid, right? That's not the story, right? The story is, when you come down to what he was in jail for, right? This is the story here, right? The admission in relation to a history of absconding and violence, and the concession that the defenders, or some of them, require to guard against the risk of violence by the pursuer or their staff or their medical staff, would appear to me to be sufficient, and that handcuffing in the circumstances of the case was accordance with law and necessary in a democratic society, or in the interest of public safety and for the prevention or disorder of crime. Any interference was not arbitrary. So the person in question was handed a 20-year sentence at the High Court in Glasgow on February the 5th, 1996. I was at that court that day. He and the 52-year-old who parked at Glasgow had been convicted of being accomplices of the then 28-year-old of Maryhill, Glasgow. The three men had gone to an amateur football match in Upwell Moor, Renfrewshire, on the 14th of October 1995. They wanted to kill a witness who had been in a court case involving Campbell's son, another youth. However, they got the wrong man. They intended to shoot this man, who was the treasurer for one of the teams playing that day, but they shot this man in the head and back in full view of his 6-year-old son, teammates and fans. He was playing at left back on that day. Now I'm going to stop the share here. I'm going to stop the share here, because I feel that I should explain a wee bit. So I was playing football that day, in that game of football. And I didn't drive, I was in the car with the person that they were trying to shoot, right? I was in the car with that person, and we drove, and I missed something on the journey, because he'd done something, he reacted away at a certain point that I never caught. So he was due to play football, and he always wore number 3, right? Now he's seen something that day, and I seen something that day, but I didn't know what was going on. I didn't know the backstory about the court case and everything else. I was away playing at football that day and having the game of my life, right? 4-0 up at half time. I'd scored 2 and set 2 up. It was something like playing a blinder. And then my mate gets shot in the head. Now, like gangland, the sensational headline, the gangland leader. So I had to act like with what happened. And it was a liberty, like what had happened. You know what I mean? It took liberty. So we chased after the guy with a gun. And he fired at us. And he got away, right? But the registration number of the car was F71 RFS, right? It's burnt in my head, right? Because I got the registration number of the car, and I ran to the referee and wrote it down in his book, and then ran to the boy that had been shot, wee boy, who, ironically in a twist of fate, I was married at that point to this guy, brother's wife, sister, right? So there was a connection there, right? So his wee boy clung to me. I was only 19 at the time. But I had to go to court. Like, I lived in amongst all that. I lived in amongst all the people, and I had to go to court because it was the right thing to do. Like, stoning up. Didn't matter the threat that you were under, right? Now, I know it's very, very vague connection, but I see Scotland under threat, and people, it's a chance for Scotland to kind of go, right, well, we know what the oppressive, we know the threat that we're under, and we're standing up to it because good things come here. You know what I mean? Good things come here. Certain things that have happened since that day, the guy's obviously got the jail for 20 years, and then he didn't get his claim, which he shouldn't have got anyway, because he took liberties. The guy that should have got shot knew what was happening that day, so he like ducked out of a plane that day and set the guy up to get shot. But a scummy move. If you ask me. Right, but anyway, that was me sharing a wee bit of the history. So I didn't want to put myself out there, right? For fear of certain things that could happen. So I'm putting myself out there for this. I'm putting myself out there to say that, well, if you stand up to them. At some point you've got to stand up. You need to land something on them. And if you're in a fight for your life, then if you don't fight, then your life's over, right? And I'm sorry if that sounds dramatic, but 2014, the promise of independence was snatched phase with the vow, in my opinion, and other things. And everything that we were told was going to happen, the opposite of that has happened. And look at the state we're in. And it's a chance for us to actually, because nobody else is standing up for us. There's none of the politicians standing up for us. Nobody's fighting their corner. As far as
Denny and Neil walked out last week, didn't they?
Right, well there you go. That's a start. That's a start. That's what, right. But you had to get. Now, I'm not a party politician. I'm not party politics. I mean, I forced myself to join a party because of the actions of the leader of the Scottish government and our no-fly zone rubbish with this carry on in Ukraine. Like, keep an open mind to that. Like, and then I'm going to play another wee clip of some of the people that are on bended knee down at Westminster in a wee second, and get people's thoughts on it. But first, I've spoke for a wee while. I shared a wee bit of information there. Jan, talk for a wee second while I sort something out in the background here. Huh?
Do you know, it kind of, well, there's hope and there's worry. There's potential fascist rising. World Economic Forum. But there's also the chance of a renewed beginning with the claim of right, if we grasp it, if we play it right. Because, like it or not, from Westminster's point of view, they still, as an independent Scotland, they are still going to need our resources. And that's our trump card. Is, are you going to do this nice and we can be neighbours and friends, or are you going to be a shite? Which they're always threatening they will.
Right, well, let's do this wee screen share here and get the panel's thoughts on how we're represented by the politicians at Westminster, because we mentioned Ken and Neil, which we'll get to a wee bit later on, but I wanted to get the majority of the Scottish representatives in Westminster are for the Scottish Government Party, the SNP. So let's get your thoughts on this.
We now come to SNP spokesperson Stuart M. MacDonald.
I'm grateful.
can I also say that no matter what might happen with the reshuffle following the summer, it's fair to say that the Ministry of Defence has worked cooperatively, particularly over Ukraine over these past months, and whoever takes over or stays in place, I think it's to the benefit of all of us that that continues, whoever the new Prime Minister might be. But of course, who knows?
We now come to SNP spokesperson.
Right, so I'll stop the share there, guys.
Can we not send him to China on some sort of mission and they can lock him up forever?
Right, well, that's an option. Right, I'm going to come to Farah first of all. So Farah, give us a wee second, I'll pin you on. Right, what's your thoughts on what you heard there?
My thoughts on that is we should be concentrating on the Scottish Parliament and not who comes in to Westminster. Salvo is all about truth and justice, the claim of rights. We want the people of Scotland to know that if at any time anybody from the monarch or the governments, the parliaments, have violated the people of Scotland's rights, liberties, they can be taken away. The government, the parliament can be taken off, voted off. You know, one of the things that's in a claim of rights, and Sarah had mentioned that to me, was the Common Good Fund, which is supposed to be used for the benefit of the people of Scotland. And I think when you had put on a screen share, there was a Common Good Act 1491. That's still in play in Scotland. If I'm correct, Jan, correct me if I'm wrong. That's still in play. So every council basically has to, a borough as it was called in the old days, common goods and assets are to be used for the benefit of the people of Scotland and their borough. Now councils can interpret that differently. When Sarah told me about this, I kind of looked it up, and one council had said it was for visiting dignitaries. And the other one, I know you may laugh, and the other one said it was for the use of the common good of the people, or words to that effect. And I was looking through the various councils and I thought, you know, can you guess which council said it was for honouring visiting dignitaries? Take a guess.
Oh, when you go, somebody. So, Jan, you guess.
We don't have visiting dignitaries when all men are equal, do we?
Oh, no, come on. We had COP26. The money used, you know, for visiting dignitaries. Is it from the Common Good Fund? I mean, why aren't...
Oh, right. Sorry, yes.
Good.
We'll need to find out.
Yeah, so why isn't it being used for our people that are on the breadline, who are homeless, who are suffering from food and fuel poverty? Now, as Peter already knows my views on this, and the claim of rights kind of reinforces that Scotland and her resources should benefit the people of Scotland, the diverse communities of Scotland, before we give handouts to anybody else. You know, and that's my view on it. And I've mentioned it quite a few times when I've been with Peter, and when we've done a Tweet Street podcast as well. And I was told I sounded like Nigel Farage. And see, suddenly when the claim of rights came along, I thought, bingo.
It's again.
Is the comment, you know, the Common Good Fund is kind of, you know where can you all remember? I don't know, maybe it might have been about 20 odd years ago when they started saying if you don't know you're entitled to it, it's not up to us to tell you.
Oh, it's not in the public interest. That's another one.
That's the same old game there as well. So they'll not actually tell you what's there. You need to know what's there, or, well, you know, ignorance is bliss. You know, it's that yon way.
Well, aren't they kind of using well, we're not bound by the Magna Carta. We have our own Scottish Constitution, which is a claim of rights. But are they not just using this constantly when you feed them, you send them FOI requests, and it's not in the public interest to tell you where the money is going, how it's spent, but not on the people of Scotland, not the people that are on their knees. Well, see, Salvo are here to bring people up, to raise them up, to raise the people of Scotland. So that's my view on this, Peter.
Thanks, Farah. Right, now I'm going to do another wee share and then we'll get the rest of the panel's comments on this one. Once I get it sorted out. This is my local.
That the 10,000 cuts should be reversed and a much larger army.
This is my local MP, Alan Brown. Where are we?
What it should be. Now, given the answers for the dispatch box about increased spending, does that mean that the front bench agrees that the 10,000 cuts should be reversed and a much larger army is required?
Yeah.
What it should be.
Right, talking about a much harsher army is required. Like, what's your army? What's that got to do with? What's this got to do with an independent Scotland? Anita, I'm going to come to you first, right? You're on mute, so just unmute yourself first, please.
Right, why do we need a big army? Who've we got to go to war with? Who's going to invade us? Nobody.
Oh, well, we're already
The enemy. Here?
Already here.
Aye, they're already here. They've already been invaded. We're here.
Aye, but I mean, oh. Well, I can't really see the Russians invading us.
No.
Do you know? I
don't see
kind of.
Russians for the simple reason is apparently they were part of the propaganda for the establishment in 2014.
Yeah.
Wondered if they've changed their minds now.
I wonder. Oh, well, they've certainly got the Tories in their pocket anyway. Jan, Tweet Street Jan, what have you got to say there?
Hi, when you're talking about defence and army, and we're paying quite handsomely towards it, but we cannot command a single soldier. If it came down to it, we've paid a fortune for an army to work against us. They could take away that. It's an imbued threat. It's an implied threat. It's a possibility. It's a risk. It's not necessary. If we were an equal union, they should take it away and take it away now. And also, we've got Trident sitting here in our backyard, and we're in NATO with no say whatsoever. We have to address that too.
Aye, right. So a wee quick interruption. We've got folk online. So hi to Katrina, hi to Brian, hi to Peter, commenting on YouTube. If anybody's got any questions, post them online. Although folk are answering the questions that some folk are asking on some of the comments, which is good because that goes to show. Because we've got Sarah's tuned in as well. So there's folk there like trying to field some of the inquiries and showing that the interest is there. How do we what's the next step for us to grow this into unstoppable? Where do we go? Right, so David, I'm going to come to you for that.
So what we need to do is we started saying on our website, if you check the bit that says Shape Your Scotland, just down from the kind of in the middle of the homepage, we're talking about a national liberation movement. Now, and what we think is that the Yes movement as such, it was formed in 2012 and has been kind of like, you know, it's a bit disparate just now, and I think it's looking for a home. And I know we've got an independence referendum coming, although there doesn't seem to be very much independence campaigning. I think what we'd like is all the people that are in Yes is to sign up for Salvo and become part of this national liberation movement that we've got going. I mean, I noticed that there's a guy on Twitter that I follow. In fact, I think we follow each other. A guy called Bill Cruikshank. And one of his, I think he's got like about, 40,000 followers if you're watching this, Bill. And one of his comments just created a movement, just like that. And he called it the Civil Rights or the Scottish Civil Rights Movement. And I was thinking, well, yeah, that's a great idea. But these guys have got nowhere to go. There's no website, there's no Twitter feed. It's just a thing that they've got going. And they've got little avatars and a new kind of like logo for their Twitter feeds. And that's the kind of people that we'd like to come across to Salvo and join the national liberation movement and really get this thing going. Since we launched on the 3rd of July, we had about 170 odd members. We've now got almost 1,000. So we've gone up from like 170 to 1,000 in less than a month. But that's great, but it's just not enough. You know, that needs to be times 100. You know, we need to get 100,000 people as part of the national liberation movement, because this is only going to work if we get a body behind us, if we can really get the pressure of the people behind us. So we're working with yes groups. We've got SSRG coming. We're trying to recruit as many people as we can right across Scotland, from the borders to Benbecula, trying to get people, local people, because this is not just about, you know, the 8 of us at Salvo. You know, we need to get the whole of the country moving and get little kind of like groups in their areas, because that's going to be very important once we get the assemblies of the communities going. Now, we're just starting out, but if you want to join Salvo, sign it up, and you'll see on the Salvo form, it says, do you want to be considered for the assemblies of the communities? Tick that wee box and we'll be contacting you. So that's what we want to do.
So will that mean like all our communities can have wee groups within them?
Yes, yes, that's how it works. I mean, the Convention of the Estates was the 17th century, 16th and 17th century embodiment of like an ombudsman. So the Convention of the States kind of sat beside Parliament. It didn't make any laws, but what it did was that it enforced the laws that were there as regards civil rights. That's what it was there for. So what we're trying to do is to try to reconstitute the Convention of the Estates so that we can then say, look, this government, this union doesn't suit us. It's already breached the Treaty of Union a number of times. And that's what we want to reconstitute, the Convention of the Estates. And maybe we'll do that by, you know, resurrecting the Scottish Independence Convention that was started around about 1988. I think we'd like to try and do that again, to try and get the Convention of the Estates up and running. But we're not going to be able to do that unless we have a movement behind us. And we're calling that movement National Liberation Movement. So join us.
Yeah, I'm a member. I'm just thinking.
Yeah, you're a member. Tell other people to join.
You know, community council ideas.
Well, it's kind of like council, you know, lots of countries around the world have citizens' assemblies. It's that kind of thing. Iceland's got one.
If people are sitting talking and they've got opposing views or things in common that they want to see fixed, they'll cross that divide of yes and no.
Right.
They'll come on board.
Well, remember, it's not looking for things to be fixed as such, you know, like fixing the roads and stuff like that. This is not a body that makes legislation. This is a body that checks the legislation that was already there. We talked about the Constitution. So if the government varies away from the Constitution, it's the Convention that will either bring it back or it will sack them. That's what the Convention does. And that's what we can do to the Treaty of Union.
Right. I'm going to interject here a wee second, because I'm going to play a wee video clip. Hold on. I'm going to play a video clip, and it's a well-known name and face as far as the Scottish independence movement and Scotland goes, and it's pretty relevant because the face you'll probably recognise for the poll tax side of things way back when. Right. But it's relevant because we've just reintroduced warrant sales. Or the Scottish government are trying to reintroduce warrant sales. It's a step backwards. Anyway, so
one fighting them, so.
No, David, thank you very much for joining us. I know you've got another commitment at 8:30. So this lasts for 10 minutes, this clip. So I've got absolutely no doubt you've seen Tommy Sheridan's clip, but it's for our online viewers so that everybody can get to see it. If you want to duck out while this is playing, fair dues, and thanks very much for joining us. And we'll carry on the conversation with Farah, Anita and Jan, until we catch up with all the chat. But thanks very much, David. And obviously, good luck, and hopefully we can help towards pushing some of that luck ourselves. And if we can help out, then we certainly will. So thanks very much, David. I'll do the screen share now, and we'll play this video, folks.
The whole independence movement in Scotland is now obligated to mobilise in support of and in preparation for the 19th October 2023 Indy Ref 2 date with destiny. After winning 3 consecutive UK general elections in 15, 17 and 19 and 2 Scottish elections in 16 and 20, the SNP, Scotland's principal party of independence, has an unquestionable mandate to call and organise a second referendum on the constitutional future of Scotland. History is very important and demands respect. When the unelected clique acted behind the backs of the Scottish people in 1707 and sold out our independence as a nation, they betrayed our right to govern ourselves, but not our sovereign identity as a nation. They agreed to a voluntary union which created a new entity called Britain, without extinguishing the nations of Scotland or England. In July 2018, Westminster debated a motion which recognised the continued effect and power of the 1689 Claim of Right, endorsed by the Scottish Parliament in 1703 and never overturned since, that the Scottish people are sovereign and retain the right to determine whichever form of government they see fit. This continued prevalence of the spirit and import of the Claim of Right was referred to by the SNP's Westminster leader Ian Blackford in opening that debate in 2018. He said, "When the Scottish Parliament debated and adopted the Claim of Right in 2012, it did not endorse and was not being asked to endorse the principle of independence. It was asked to acknowledge the principle of deciding on independence. So the Claim of Right is not just an historical document, a scholarly debating point, or an obscure document. It is a fundamental principle on which our democracy rests. The UK government, in accepting this tonight, are making a serious and important point about maintaining the union as a partnership of equals. They need to understand that." He concluded his remarks with reference to the all-party Scottish Constitutional Convention. In closing, we and this Tory government in particular should reflect on the famous words of the convener of the Scottish Constitutional Convention, Canon Kenyon Wright, who said at the opening of the convention, "What if that other voice we all know so well responds by saying, 'We say no and we are the state'? Well, we say yes and we are the people." The eloquent and effective Joanna Cherry intervened during that debate in 2018 to remind Parliament of the United Nations Charter of Human Rights. She said, "Earlier in this debate I intervened on the Secretary of State for Scotland to ask him whether he supported the principle of self-determination in Article 1 of the Charter of the United Nations. And I was very pleased that he said that he did. For those who need reminding, this is what Article 1 says. All peoples have the right to self-determination. By virtue of that right, they freely determine their political status and freely pursue their economic, social and cultural development." Westminster that evening of 4th July 2018 upheld the principle and letter of the 1689 Claim of Right, just as the Scottish Parliament did during its similar debate in 2012. The main question was accordingly put that night and resolved in favour that this House endorses the principles of the Claim of Right for Scotland, agreed by the Constitutional Convention in 1989 and the Scottish Parliament in 2012, and therefore acknowledges the sovereign right of the Scottish people to determine the form of government best suited to their needs. Think of those words. Acknowledges the sovereign right of the Scottish people to determine the form of government best suited to their needs. How on earth can those words and that agreed motion be consistent with denying Scotland the right to a second independence referendum after the Party of Scottish Independence has won 5 consecutive UK and Scottish national elections? Are words worthless or do they matter? The Scottish Independence Referendum Bill has been published. The date of the second independence referendum has been set for 19th October 2023. The idea that we, the Scottish people, or the Scottish Parliament, the elected voice of the Scottish people, should allow an English court to rule on our right to determine our constitutional future is outrageous and preposterous. It makes a mockery of the claim of right endorsed by the Scottish Parliament in 2012 and the British Parliament in 2018. If we truly believe in democracy and the sovereign right of the people to decide, we must insist that the 19th October referendum proceeds with or without Westminster consent. To those unionists who bleat about democracy while denying it to the people of Scotland and hide behind the fiction of a once-in-a-generation remark that appears nowhere in any document or agreement, we must acquaint them with the actual terms of the Northern Ireland Act of 1998, passed in the same year as the Scotland Act. The question of time between constitutional referendums is unambiguously laid bare for all to read in that Northern Ireland Act. Section 1, read it for yourself. Status of Northern Ireland. It states clearly, it is hereby declared that Northern Ireland in its entirety remain part of the United Kingdom and shall not cease to be so without the consent of a majority of the people of Northern Ireland voting in a poll held for the purposes of this section in accordance with Schedule 1. And Schedule 1 is clear for all to see. Schedule 1 states categorically, polls for the purpose of Section 1, the Secretary of State may by order direct the holding of a poll for the purposes of Section 1 on a date specified in the order. 2, subject to paragraph 3, the Secretary of State shall exercise the power under the paragraph 1 if at any time it appears likely to him that a majority of those voting would express a wish that Northern Ireland should cease to be part of the United Kingdom and form part of a United Ireland. And this is the crucial part, Section 3. The Secretary of State shall not make an order under paragraph 1 earlier than 7 years after the holding of a previous poll under this schedule. 7 years. It's there in black and white. We have it as clear as day and agreed by the Westminster parties almost unanimously that a poll in Northern Ireland reunifying with Ireland will have a 7-year interval. It's written into law. That's the legal definition of a political generation for the purposes of a constitutional referendum in Northern Ireland. Why on earth would a different timescale be applied to Scotland? A political generation in terms of referendums is not 25 or 40 years. It is as defined in law in the Northern Ireland Act, 7 years. Our referendum in 2014 took place 8 years ago. Our new referendum and the changed political circumstances of withdrawal from the European Union against Scotland's will and the victory of the Scottish National Party supporting independence in 5 consecutive elections. That new referendum will take place 9 years after the first referendum. Should the Unionists choose to boycott that referendum, so be it. Our task will be to ensure a turnout of more than 50% of the eligible Scottish population and a resounding victory for yes to the question of whether we should become independent once again. No ifs, no buts, no maybes. The mandates are numerous. The will of the Scottish people is clearly expressed in 5 separate elections. We cannot lie down to Westminster bullying. We cannot accept Tory denial of democracy. We must stand up united as one and declare 19th October as our day of destiny. Backing down, shying away, crumbling in the face of Tory tyranny is not an option for genuine Democrats and Scottish patriots. The date has been announced. Stick with it, come what may. Build an unstoppable 19th October movement for Scottish democracy and unite the whole of Scotland around the right to choose our form of government, the most basic of human rights. Say it loud, say it proud, and say it often. 19th of October is our day of destiny and hopefully our day of freedom, unlocking Scotland's potential to build a new, fairer, more just and nuclear weapon-free independent country. Get involved. Unite all the independence campaigns in Scotland. Build the 19th October movement. Assemble in Glasgow on the 18th of September from 12 noon onwards and celebrate what we nearly achieved exactly 8 years ago to the day in 2014. But most of all, celebrate what we will achieve next 19th October when we vote yes. Join the hope over fear. Yes, devil, for Scottish independence.
Right, so I'll stop with share on that.
Let this soft mineral melt in your mouth to rebuild your
hold
gums
on, hold
and
on,
teeth
hold
and
on,
never
hold on,
need a
hold on.
dentist again.
I love Tommy, but it sounds almost, you know, when I hear him or Alex talking about the referendum on the 19th, it's almost as if they're trolling. I don't know what's going to happen. There's certainly not much campaigning coming from SNP quarters anyway.
Well, no, I seen Mr. Blackford posted something on Twitter about his away on holiday.
Well, I'm blocked, so I wouldn't see it.
Again, I didn't really see it. Somebody posted it and posted a picture. About his helicopter ride over the Grand Canyon. Cost of living crisis.
Oh, very nice.
Brexit bonus. I mean,
let them eat cake.
aye. Let them know, heat themselves. Let them know be able to eat. Let them know live. Let them live to serve. Serfdom. Sounds like the strong shoulder of the union. Isn't something? It's not something I want to be a party. And
it's certainly comfortable for the likes of Ian and Chris Law and
we've heard some of the ones commenting. Anita, what's your thoughts on what Tommy was saying?
Well, it's just piling the pressure on it. Piling the pressure on the SNP and Nicola.
Yeah.
The mere people pile the pressure on, well, the mere chance there is something actually happening.
True. Right.
Yeah.
Comments coming in from Katrina. Good job, Tommy. But shouldn't Nicola be ramping things up for the referendum? Totally agree. Patricia's saying thanks, Sarah. And one of the things it protects is the common good, so it can fix things. It can enforce the last against profiteering, famine, hunger, and gin money to your pals at the expense of the people. Aye, good, fair comment, Sarah. So a lot of people know that we're not getting a fair crack of the whip, really. Oh, Jan, there was a comment. Could you turn your volume up because you're a wee bit low? That was something I meant to say. No, you, Jan. No, you. Salvo, Jan. I meant to say back then. Aye, so I'm just checking to see, is there any other questions coming in? Brian says the National Liberation Movement is a term recognised by the United Nations. Right, so actually, I've got a wee video there that I created. Again, it's just me putting things together in my creative, I call it anxiety art, right? When I'm anxious, I put things together, and it's usually online stuff that I magpie, and I put it all together and make something, right? So I call it anxiety art, right? Well, that's my name for it anyway. So I'm going to try and play something. Where is it? Right, anxiety art. So we've got Oh, where is it? We'll play this one. Hold on. Come on. Right, here we go. Oh. Sorry folks, I forgot I've not shared the screen. Right, wait a minute. Okay. Even this is recorded, you edit all this rubbish out, right? But when you do it, you can't hear. Goes to show what how amateur you are. Right, here we go.
Questions to the Prime Minister. I start with Robin Miller.
Are you
Mr. Speaker.
for Scottish indeed? Strange things are happening, just look and you will see. Tory Brexit is killing us, being an active SNP. Are you for Scottish indeed? Are you for Scottish indeed? Strange things are happening, just look and you will see. Tory Brexit is killing us, being an active SNP. Are you for Scottish indeed? Are you for Scottish indeed? Strange things are happening, just look and you will see. Tory Brexit is killing us, being an active SNP. Are you for Scottish indeed? Are you for Scottish indeed? Strange things are happening, just look and you will see. Tory Brexit is killing us, being an active SNP. Are you for Scottish indeed? Are you for Scottish indeed? Strange things are happening, just look and you will see. Tory Brexit is killing us, being an active SNP. Are you for Scottish indeed? Are you for Scottish indeed? Strange things are happening, just look and you will see. Tory Brexit is killing us, being an active SNP. Are you for Scottish indeed? Are you for Scottish indeed? Are you for Scottish indeed? Are you for Scottish indeed?
So that was my anxiety art for the wee bit of Hunger Games, a wee bit of like just grabbing stuff off online before accounts get suspended and stuff like that, and then sharing it.
I had to close my eyes, Peter. That wasn't good.
Well, again, it just goes to show. It just goes to show that some of the people that are entrusted with power aren't desirable. Like, shut up, deal with them. You know what I mean? It was said that when the two MPs, which I'll share the video a wee bit later, when the two MPs were suspended, they shouldn't have been either. So again, just goes to show the difference of treatment when you had the Egypt, then his final PMQ and walking out and getting applause when you're not, that's not supposed to happen when you can't get a voice heard for Scotland. You know what I mean? It's like, it's a bit angering. So I end up doing things like that as a result. So your thoughts?
Why it's anxiety art?
Sorry?
It's self-explanatory why it's anxiety art, because you really put everything together that's causing you anxiety, and pretty much a lot of people in Scotland feel the exact same way.
Aye. I mean, there's like, you try and kind of channel it, and you try and dating a way that gets a message out, I suppose, you know what I mean? And that's my way of doing it. It's like, oh, sorry. It's by doing things like this, occupying my thoughts on it, by channeling it into creativity and things like that. There was something that I'd created that, and I'll probably not going to share it. It was the A to Z Jigsaw identification, but I don't think it's fair on Salvo, and I don't think it's fair on Jan, who's still here, because it's controversial. It's an art piece. It's so controversial. Last week's, or the last broadcast that we done wasn't allowed on YouTube. It was taken off YouTube after 100 views.
Gosh,
right? Still available on Twitter and still available on Facebook. So YouTube didn't want.
What did we do, Peter? What did we say?
And it was again, it was about information that that is controversial, right? It's controversial information that gets shared, and then it gets deleted.
It's also
right?
opinion,
Yeah,
you know?
accounts get deleted and suspended, and there's no way for these things to get heard. However, when you actually do a wee bit of investigating or a wee bit of, like, if you're up all night because you can't sleep because that's just something that somebody's like, you look at stuff and you kind of look for things, and obviously the claim of right was started off, it was supposed to be a conspiracy. So you obviously get my theme, and the A is Z Jigsaw identification. You get my theme. But I don't want to tarnish anybody else's Salvo's wonderful information that they've delivered tonight and the message that they're putting out. I don't want to do that. So it's an art piece. It is art. It's controversial. And if anybody knows anything about art can be controversial. But just because it's controversial doesn't mean to say that people shouldn't get to see it or get to hear it. Now, there's a backstory to this. You wouldn't get to see the full edited version, however, because when I edited it and I transferred it and I tried to upload it onto YouTube, it says that I abandoned uploading it. It says it was something very strange, right? Because it's something that's never happened to me before, right? And I've got the gist of what I'm doing now, right? So it was very strange. But as anybody that's got to be controversial, you want to have backup to that. So I had backup to it anyway, that I've still got. But now it'll not allow me to upload it anywhere. So I would have to share it through my personal file, which I'm prepared to do, right? But just knowing Salvo's panel tonight, because it was titled A to Z Jigsaw identification for a specific purpose, and there is an art piece. So I'm just explaining for anybody. I don't want to disappoint anybody that might be been tuning in for that, but I just don't want the wonderful chat that we've got now to be lost, and nobody gets to see it by me being controversial at the end. So it's there. There will be a live stream.
People are waking up anyway. The more time's going on, the less SNP are doing, the more they're seen to be rubbish. People are starting to wake, they're starting to see. And if we can get Salvo out there, that's where we have to go. But people are waking up to what's been happening.
Right. Well, what I'll do, right, is I'll give everybody a wee teaser in this art, right? I'm prepared to give everybody a wee teaser in my A to Z of Jigsaw identification, right? It'll only be a teaser. However, I'm keeping it safe for this teaser. I can't play it all. I would love to play it all. I'm getting private messages saying play it all, play it all. Right? I'm no tarnishing the great message that Salvo's put out. But I'll amuse ever so slightly, and I'll tease with this, right?
And I'll put it up somewhere under a onion tor or something like that.
well, I will be. Oh, it's not even living to you. What's going on? See, this is how controversial this thing is, right? It's that one, right? Can you see that? A. Folks on the stream, can you see that letter A? John, anybody?
As in the A of the class? No.
Can you see that picture that's on? No.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. The speaker and the.
No.
All right.
Still up in the stream.
Right, hold on now then. Stop share. I've shared the wrong one.
How were we supposed to get that then?
Right, I don't know. Right, see, it's taking it away now. It's taking it away. It's been bad to me.
Tell you to do it, Peter. Just do it. Everybody's waiting.
Right, if I do that and go there and then go share and then go right, here it is. Right. Can you see that? The letter A.
Yeah.
For Nicola Sturgeon.
Yes.
Right, cool. Right, just wanted to make sure he's good, right? So I'm going to play the letter A. Now you need to listen to what's getting said as well. And that would have been the theme for the full 40 minutes that this alphabet goes on, right? But well, this is the A to Z Jigsaw identification. As you'll see here, we've got A, which is for like artificial, like as you'll see there, like grass, artificial, like false grass. But let's try to explain this to the next door neighbour, and they were saying, what, like somebody that makes up stories about you, and then spreads it to try and damage you and stuff like that. And I says, no, like artificial grass, like AstroTurf, right? So that's A, I think, pretty much. Well, no, really, because you've got autogenophilia, right? Which is something else that you should look up. And adrenochroming, that's something else you should look up. Now, B is for babysitting and babysitters. And as you'll see, we've got the head guy, the YSI, who does the babysitting for the YSI, and what have you. Does something with his eyebrow allegedly, like looks like the Rock or something like that. Don't know what that means. And then we've got C, which a lot of folk think is for carrots, which it is for carrots. C is for carrots. But it's also like for like a creche, like a carrot creche, actually. So just like I was saying about the head of the YSI, like that's where they get all the people, young dafties in, that they can lead the carrots. Aye, the carrot creche. Right, so that was my A, B and C of my Jigsaw identification. And as you'll see,
it's slightly different.
What?
Mine's is slightly different.
Well, see, that's the thing. Folk could have different letters for different words for the letter A, different descriptions and how they would describe it. and that's the create, and that's what art's about. It's like art's about putting your take on it, and then other people going, oh, or I would have done this, or I would have done that, and this is how I would change these things. This is what would have appealed to me more. However, it went all the way to Z. It's got a proper ending. However, as it went on, that's where the controversies started. And as I say, it's satire a lot. It's about conspiracies, because claim of right was supposed to be a conspiracy. There's other conspiracies. So, aye.
The thing is, like conspiracy, a lot of people don't actually fully understand. They've made conspiracy out to be some sort of dirty word. But see, if you were I don't know, CID, you have to pull in. You've got to put out everything and every possibility that could possibly be. Then you start narrowing it down. Conspiracy isn't a dirty word, you know. And I'm quite sure in Scotland we could probably show, like the claim of right, is not a conspiracy. It's fact.
Aye. Right, well, I'm going to come to Anita because we're just about finishing up. So, Anita, over to you.
What do you want me to say?
We're just about finishing up. So, a final message to everybody. Like, put out an appeal, say whatever you've got to say.
Here we go again. Name your shite. Use the claim of right.
That's exactly.
Join Salvo.
I want one of their t-shirts.
That's thanks to Nancy. She made it as a wee present for me.
Brilliant.
Farah, I'm going to come to you now. Have you got a message you want to put out to everybody?
Yeah, Salvo, claim of right, walk with us, walk beside us as we make our journey to Scottish independence, to fight the oppression and the tyranny of unelected dictators and elected dictators.
Wherever they may come from. Salvo Jan, you got a final message you want to put out?
Well, but as good as anyone, you know. Why not? Get yourself respect together and we'll face them down in Westminster.
Right.
We're Scotland. I'm not taking it anywhere.
Well said, John. Right, the other Jan, no. If you get a final message you want to put out.
Yeah, I do. Way back in time when our family, our brothers, our sisters, our people of Scotland were forced off their land. They had to leave our country for many different reasons, whether it be down the borders or whether it be up in the Highlands. They were forced off their land. It's time to come back because we need you. We need you. It doesn't matter what country you're in. You can fight for your forefathers who were forced off the land and millions of miles away from home because they had no option. We need your help now. Come back, stand up for us, do whatever it takes. But we need you. We need everybody. Scots are everywhere. Please help us. Whether you're in America, write to your Senate, do whatever it is. But please, if you feel Scottish, you're a Scottish descendant, help us. Help us to gain our independence and our freedom. Because when that happens, we can all celebrate. We need you home. You have a right to be home. You were chased from your home. Now's the time.
Now is the time. And pretty much on that note, what I'm going to try and do is just one final wee screen share, wherever I find that. And it's just this message I want to put up, some messages. Right, so here we go. I'll read this out, right, because it's quite important. Well, I think anyway. I don't know how to make it any bigger than that, right? But the UK Parliament claims it is sovereign. What it means by sovereign is this: we're in charge, not you. And we will always be in charge. You can vote for new government, but we will always be in charge. But they're not in charge in Scotland. Here, we the people are in charge. It's you, me, all of us that are sovereign, not Parliament. And because we are sovereign, we can create wonderful new opportunities for our country. Just imagine building a new future to our country without asking Westminster if it's okay. We can shape a new future for Scotland, one in which we can live free under our own constitution, a constitution that will free us forever from the stinking corruption, the constant lying and the grasping greed of the Union. Right, so make sure you visit Shape Scotland's Future in salvo.scot. How come we're suddenly sovereign? Scotland's people have always been sovereign since before the days of Robert the Bruce, but some say that our sovereignty ended in the union with England in 1707. It's just not true. It's what the UK government would like you to think, but we need to stop thinking that. Here's why. In 1707, the Scottish Parliament inserted a condition into its Act of Union with England, a condition that preserved in all time coming the sovereignty of the Scottish people. But in England, where Parliament was sovereign, the new UK Parliament simply claimed sovereignty over Scotland's people. It's our job at Salvo to tell you that this was wrong, and it's still wrong. The time is now for us to rise up and to proclaim the sovereignty of the Scottish people. So there you go. That's how it's finishing. It's a message for Salvo, for everybody that's took part tonight, for John, for David, for Farah, for Jan, for Anita, for Salvo themselves, everybody that's commented, Porty, Sol, Alan Petrie, I can't, Katrina, too many names to mention have commented, so thanks very much for taking the time out to listen up to what's been said and try and spread the word, and we'll try and do something a wee bit further down the line to let people know how this is progressing, but hopefully you'll know that and you'll get to see it growing and be a part of that growth and be a part of that drive, part of the resistance. Well, I never got to R on the alphabet, but that was R, right? So that gives away.
You never got H.
Listen, I've got an alibi for that. I've got a rock solid alibi for that. Right. H isn't in it, right? Boom. There you go.
Of course, not in the building.
Right. So it wasn't even included in the art, right? That was a controversy. Boom. There you go. And I was really careful about that. It was something else that was controversial, something that's big, something that's bigger than Scotland. That way. But anyway, that'll come somehow. Somehow I'll get that out. But anyway, guys, for this evening, for the live stream, for everybody that's took part, for Tweet Street Scotland, for the satirical Saltire, for Cinnamon Bridges, aka Peter. Everybody keeps calling me Pete for some reason, and my name's Peter, right? Nobody gets it, but anyway, I'm going to say that again. It's Peter, right?
No cosy slippers, then, no.
No, that's what probably makes me hate it as much, right? It's like, don't right? Unless you can give that guy a tip on how to fiddle his expenses, he doesn't know what to talk to you. You know what I mean? And that's especially if you're Scottish. Right. Anyway, and on that note, it's good night for everybody. And thanks very much for joining us on the live stream. So,
night.